back here with Glen-L Marine Designs, and we are in beautiful Guild, Tennessee for our annual boat builder gathering that we have every year that our boat builder members of the forum organize. And I'm here today with Neel Thompson, and he has built one of the Glen-L designs, and I'm going to let him tell us a little bit about it. First off, Neel, which boat did you build?
Well, I built the Gentry, which is a little over 17 feet on the plans, and stretched it 10% roughly to almost 19 feet.
How did you stretch it?
I went like this. They tell you how to do it in the plans. You move each frame a certain 10%, which ended up being 3 inches per frame times, I think, 5 frames. So it gave it about 1.5 feet. And then when you stretch it, you don't change the bow area at all, or the transom. So it's all the frames in between the transom and the bow.
I'm just checking to make sure you did it right. So let me ask you this. What type of wood did you use for your boat? Well, and tell us a little bit about the construction method too, because people may not be familiar with the type.
Well, it starts out, the frames are all African mahogany. In fact, everything in the boat pretty much is African mahogany. And what I did was I built the frames out of African mahogany, and then I used African mahogany stringers, and then put then the battens are African mahogany, the keel, everything African mahogany. Then I went with Akumi plywood, 2 layers of 1/4 inch on the diagonal, first this way and then this way, and then capped it with 1/8 inch thick mahogany planking all the way up. Okay. That's the sides. The deck is Akumi plywood and 3/8 inch thick African mahogany on top of that, about 2 5/8 wide with a 5/16 gap.
Okay, so this type of boat that he's talking about, the construction, it's called cold molded construction. And with a boat like the Gentry, it's got some curves, compound curves that plywood will not conform to. So in order to build this type of hull, you have to lay the plywood in layers, and they're on a diagonal. So there's usually 2 or 3 layers, usually 3. And each layer will be on a different diagonal. So it's kind of like you're building plywood in place for this type of boat. Now on the aft end of the boat towards the transom, it may be a little bit flatter, and then you can use sometimes larger sheets of wood. But I know you changed your transom a little bit on the Gentry too. You added a little more of a barrel back to that. You want to tell us about how you did that?
I'm not really quite sure how I did it, but it seemed to work out. Because I stretched the boat, I was able to move the seat forward a little bit and allowed me to drop a fuel tank down between the engine stringers. So that allowed the back deck to be lower, because on the plans it calls for a raised area about 2 or 3 inches high. So I kept the back deck just going up as a barrel because the fuel tank was down. Okay. Pretty much.
Yeah. Did you have to change the transom or anything to do that?
The transom is not changed at all. The transom is exactly as it is on the plans, as is the bow. It's just that I had to bring the deck into the transom. So I actually started at the seat and worked back toward the transom, which is set in the plans. So I couldn't change that. It had to go back.
Well, you could.
I could.
Some guys change everything, but that's okay. That's why you build your own boat. You do what you want, right?
Yeah.
And you added an additional seat.
I did. Because I stretched it, I was able to put a mother-in-law seat in front of the motor. The plans call for just the 1 seat in the back. I have that plus 1 in the front.
Okay. When you did your final layer of the mahogany on the planking on the outside of the hull, did you spile those so that they're level, and how did you do that?
Well, that whole spiling process is something, and I was on the forum, and you basically mark the frames in even sectors on each frame, and then I'm trying to remember spiling. If you just start with a piece of mahogany 4 inches wide and run it from the transom up, it will spin up at the bow. So what you want to do is get it so it sort of looks level to the water line. And so if you went back each frame and marked, say you're going to put 5 layers or 5 rows of planking, you divide each frame by 5 and put the marks. And then you connect the dots. And then you try and cut the mahogany to that shape. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's hard. And if you look at mine, it follows the water line. The planks follow the water line from the transom forward almost all the way up, and then they kind of go up a little bit in the front, and that's the best I could do. It was hard.
Yeah, it is. All right, another question. What time to build, and what did it cost you approximately? I know you're not quite finished, but what do you think you'll have into it?
Well, it took me a little over 2 years, and I think somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000, which would include the trailer and the motor. But I bought the motor on eBay, so it was a used motor. But you could do it for $25,000, I think.
And speaking of which, what type of motor did you use?
I got it on eBay, and it's a 350 cubic inch General Motors fuel injected motor with a 1-to-1 transmission.
So you say you always wanted to build a mahogany boat, or you always wanted to build your own boat. Where do you plan on using it, and how come you wanted to build a boat? That's not something everybody thinks about.
Well, I always wanted to build a boat. I don't know why, but I did. And when I was a kid, my uncle had a mahogany runabout that I loved, and so I did it. And I think I'm going to use the boat primarily on inland lakes, but mainly, or also on the Chesapeake Bay, because I love the Chesapeake.
One last question. What kind of background do you have? Have you built a boat before? Have you built other things? What is your background?
When I was going to college, I worked for a carpenter, and we built a couple houses and remodeled houses. I did some of that, but I was a Navy pilot, so I didn't build anything when I was a pilot. Yeah. And no, very little experience. Anybody can do this, I think.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Neel. We
You're
appreciate it, and we look forward to taking a ride in your boat later on.
Let's go.
All right. Now we're sitting in Neel's Gentry, and it is absolutely gorgeous. What a beautiful boat that he's built. And so we got a couple more questions for him. First off, I just learned that he has a beer delivery system in his boat, so we're going to have him tell you about that.
Well, there's actually a 2-can delivery system that's it's a linear actuator that runs from under the dashboard over here up to the mother-in-law seat up front and back. But last night I was demonstrating it, and it's now stuck up in the mother-in-law area, so I can't demonstrate the beer delivery system, but it does have one.
That is really awesome. And then we have armrests too. Neel was talking about armrests because that's one of the things that you don't think about when you're building a boat. Where are you going to put your arms, and you're thinking ahead constantly on what the comforts of the boat, and as well as other things. Like you mentioned the windshield, and you want to kind of tell what you did there? I know you probably didn't want me to share that, but
anyway, the hood has a V in it here. And when I built this area with the hood, initially it went straight across. And then I went out in the garage and I took the windshield brackets and set one here and one here and one there. And I said, no, wait a minute. It has to go to an angle. So that's why you now see it an angle. I had to cut this, redo this, and hopefully it'll fit.
Yeah. Okay, one last question. How fast does the boat go?
Well, I think it'll go over 50, but with me in it, 40. No more than 40, let's put it that way.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry, one more question. Can I have a ride?
Sure.
Okay, let's go. Yes. All right. That's the sound we like, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're off. See you later.
Yeah, you guys have fun.
Bye-bye.